Okay, let's talk about auxiliary verbs in English. Auxiliary verbs are verbs that help you understand what tense the verb is in, and they also help you when you want to make questions or negative statements in English. Let's take a look at a few examples. So in this sentence, Sam has gone to the store. The verb is has gone. The main verb is gone, and the auxiliary verb is has. Like we said before, the auxiliary verb helps us to identify the verb tense, and the main verb carries most of the meaning of the verb, as well as some information about the verb tense. Let's look at another example. The team should have been practicing more often. The verb in this sentence is should have been practicing. So we can actually have several words in one verb. The main verb in this one is practicing. And the auxiliary, actually we have several auxiliaries, it is should have been. So this one takes 3 auxiliary verbs. Let's look at another example. Our entire family will be taking a vacation next summer. In this sentence, the verb is will be taking. The main verb is taking, and the auxiliary verb is will be. So we have 2 auxiliary verbs which help us to understand that this verb is in the future. There are 2 times when you will find no auxiliary verbs with a verb in a sentence. Let's look at the examples of when you will find that. In the sentence, James always goes to the gym, the only verb we have is goes. There is no auxiliary verb. Why? Because in the present simple tense, with positive statements, we have no auxiliary verb. Let's look at the other time when you will not find an auxiliary verb. In the sentence, we drove to the park yesterday, the main verb is drove, and there is no auxiliary. Why is there no auxiliary in this sentence? Because in the past simple also, with positive statements, we have no auxiliary verb. So in the past simple and in the present simple, with positive statements, you will only have the main verb. But sometimes in the past simple and present simple, you will find an auxiliary. Let's look at some examples of that. In these sentences, they don't talk to me much, and does Jill want to go home, we have 2 verbs, and we have the auxiliary do and does. In the first sentence, talk is the main verb and do is the auxiliary. In the second sentence, does is the auxiliary and want is the main verb. Why do we have these here? Because in the present simple, when we have negative statements or questions, we do have an auxiliary verb, and the verb is do or does. Let's look at when we can use the auxiliary in the past simple. In the sentence, you didn't listen to me, and did you say something, we have the auxiliary did, and in the first sentence, the main verb is listen. In the second sentence, the main verb is say. So in the past simple, also with negative statements or questions, we can have an auxiliary verb, and that verb is did. So I have listed here some of the auxiliary verbs in the tenses that they go with. You do not need to only memorize auxiliary verbs. This is just for reference. If you want to pause the video and look at some of these, you can do that, and this will help you to get used to what auxiliary verbs are and when you might see them. Don't forget that modal auxiliary verbs are also auxiliaries. So when you have could, would, should, and verbs like that, they count as part of the verb. So let's review some of the things that we've learned about auxiliary verbs. First of all, auxiliary verbs come before the main verb, and there might be one auxiliary verb or there might be 3 or 4 auxiliary verbs. Secondly, auxiliary verbs are not found in positive statements in the present simple tense or in the past simple tense. And thirdly, auxiliary verbs are important for making questions and negative statements. We will talk more about this in a different video. I hope this video has been helpful. If you would like some listening practice, you can go to listenlearnspeak.net. The link is in the description below, and get some practice with the podcast that's listed there. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.